How are you? I don't know how, Dan, but I am signed on my phone for some reason.
I did wonder, didn't I? Yeah.
Phone's got a mind of its own. Good evening, Gordon. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Hey, evening, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
That's good. Like my second one I'm joining, so yeah, haven't been coming for long. But yeah, thanks for organising these.
That's all right. That's fine. Yeah. That's no problem. No problem whatsoever. I quite like it, actually.
Yeah.
In fact, it's free now because we got the sponsors. I mean,
yeah.
When I started it off, I didn't have any sponsors, but now it's I'm able to keep it free. You know.
Okay. Cool. That's good.
So as long as I can get it sponsored, then that's what I'll do with it.
Yeah, because I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that. What was that?
I thought it was going to start at 6:45, and then I thought it must be a paid event. I'm not been let into the room. So I thought,
no, it's yeah, it was sort of we started doing this, you know, this little chit chat beforehand, you know, just to get to know people. So because otherwise, I just start off with a little spiel, and that's it. Next thing I know, it's gone 9 o'clock. I'm trying to keep it between 7 and 9.
Yeah.
So we've got some sort of structure to it.
Okay.
Invariably, it'll go on 9:30, something like that.
Okay, cool. So what kind of stuff are you into then?
Running property meets. I'm actually a retired fireman.
Okay.
And you know, for my sins, and I bought a couple of houses here and there, and just started playing about with property, really.
Okay.
So I've got a few buy-to-lets, got an HMO, got spread up between Scotland and Brighton.
Okay. Okay. That's quite a wide range then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you manage them yourself, is it?
I've got agents normally.
Agents, you have to have.
You can't go up and down all the time yourself. It's a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm in London. I mean, I wish I had I wish I'd had the forethought to go and do it locally.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, you know, I'd have got better out of it. But there you go.
Yeah. Where in London are you?
Sorry?
Where in London are you?
I'm in Northolt at the moment with my lady.
Oh. Okay, you're not far from me. I'm in Hounslow.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Now there's a place.
My investments all around Heathrow.
Are they?
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
They keep you busy?
Not really.
You do it full time?
Yeah, since 2019, I gave up my job and was doing property full time now.
Yeah.
But yeah, not enough to keep busy though, to be honest. It just kind of
that's chill. What I'm finding, you know, I mean, the properties sort of run themselves, and
yeah.
I'm looking for something else. I've got an idea in mind, so we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah.
I keep looking away. I keep looking at the clock. I should look at the computer. 1858. Who's that? Is that you? Andy Jones just appeared. Good evening.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent. Yeah, all right. All ready. I'm just waiting for the minute to go. Almost 7 o'clock, and I'll kick the meat off. Busy, Andy?
Quiet day today, actually.
Excellent.
Yeah, you?
Yeah, not too bad. I was just messing about doing this, getting this together, really.
Yeah.
Other bits and pieces. We're doing a flat at the moment. We're just decorating, painting, and stuff. So been doing that on and off during the week.
Keeping out of trouble.
Whereabouts are you, Andy?
I'm in Hackney.
Yeah, that's not a million miles away.
Where are you?
I'm in Norfolk.
Okay. Yeah. What else have we got on tonight? Where else are people from?
We got.
Have you done a roundup?
We got all sorts. We've got 3 speakers. It's the first time we tried 3 speakers. So we're going to be flying through it tonight, I should think. And people from everywhere. People from all over the place.
Right.
So, right, 7 o'clock. Ready to go, Dan?
Yep,
Okay.
all good to go.
All good to go. Right, here we are. We're going. We're off. Good evening. Welcome to the online property meet. We're here again. We're here every Wednesday, every first Wednesday of the month, as a lot of people know, and we aim to provide a platform for people for like-minded people to get advice and that sort of thing. Seek advice, just confer with people, ask questions, whatever it is. We've got 3 fantastic speakers tonight, and just like to say welcome to everyone. Welcome to the audience, especially the audience, without whom we wouldn't have a show. And we keep the show free due to the fact we have sponsors, and we've got a new sponsor who's asked us to mention a book. Is that right, Dan? You got that there? And Dan's just going to put that up. You can have the company's called Scott Baker Properties. They're from Brighton, and they invest. They do quite a lot up north. He's got Matt Baker has got a book there. You can get a free copy of that book. I've got my own one, and also you can join the webinar just by scanning on those QR codes which are there. So they asked us to mention that. Other sponsors are Property Lobe. They're it's like a deal analysis app they've got. Luck Capital, who's Will Lucy is speaking with us tonight. Property CEO, commercial property trainer, and Need It Tidied. They're a property maintenance setup. And that'd be that. Because of the fact that we got 3 speakers, I'm going to get straight onto it, and I'm going to ask Will Lucy to, if he's ready. Can't see him. There he is.
Absolutely, I'm here.
You're here.
Yeah.
Good evening, Will. Hello
Good evening.
again. And off you go. Away you go.
Super. Right. Well, good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be on here as normal, and I am going to give you a little talk today. It's going to be slightly longer. It's going to be roughly 40 minutes. I don't know whether what I'm going to do actually fits in 40 minutes or not, but I'm going to just do my best to manage it. I'm starting my little stopwatch now. So I'm going to share my screen, and so we can actually get started. This looks like the one. Okay, so yes, good evening. So my name is William Lucy. I am a commercial broker. Okay, this is my company here, Luck Capital. I'm going to go through a couple of opening slides just so we can move through this. And here, okay, so online property meet Feb 2022, guys. Quick pre-talk points as normal, just to go through these. Everything in this talk is for business purposes. It's aimed at limited company borrowers. It's all educational purposes only. It's not personalised advice at all. So always take independent legal advice, accountancy or tax advice, etc., from a suitably qualified professionals in a particular area, because any talk points I mention in these areas is really just for educational purposes, so I can actually talk freely and actually add as much value as I can. So if I mention any products and things like this, bear in mind they are always subject to actually applying at the time. They're subject to change in the commercial world, so bear that in mind, please. Okay, so let's move on. So some of you know, you've already heard me talk before, but I just want to just cover slightly a little bit of my background, so you know sort of where I'm coming from and why on earth I actually do this. So I actually am an ex-chartered accountant. Well, I still am a chartered accountant. I always say that. but I'm an ex-finance director, okay? I worked in many industries, but finding myself actually landing in property, I worked for developers and construction companies as an FD. And obviously, when I was there, I was raising lots of finance, managing cash flow, all that sort of stuff. So what that got me really into is a love for commercial lending. I love to find the solutions for particular funding problems, okay? And that's how I came to do what I do now. So because I am a bit of a geek, I absolutely love that side of it. So now I moved away completely from accountancy. I only do funding now, and that's why we set up Luck Capital as a brokerage, okay? So that's a quick bit about me. So what I'm going to quickly cover is, okay, is what makes a good broker, okay? When you're choosing a broker, do your research, and I want to point out why using a broker is so good, and particularly obviously if they have expertise in the area that you are actually seeking advice in, okay? Now, there's quite a few of these things. I'm going to run through some of them. So now, basically new developers, most of the time new developers, they go for the cheapest deal there actually is. So they're just looking for the cheapest terms out there. Okay, now those are not always necessarily the most suitable for what you're trying to do. It depends on the lender and it depends on many other factors that you've got going on. Okay, the flexibility, the structure, all that sort of stuff. There's so many other things to take into account. So a good broker can kind of, I guess, navigate through this. Okay, they're obviously going to have expertise in their particular space. And so it's worth, there are some brokers who maybe do more buy-to-let, maybe do more homeowner mortgages, things like that. And there are more commercial commercial brokers who really specialize in aspects generally of actually developing property. So taking something, adding value to it, which is where I sit. But there are lots of different areas of expertise, so do your homework there, okay? Of course, they have a range of lenders to go to. Okay, so that's one of the main benefits. If you go to just a couple of lenders, you've not got that range. Okay, when you're going through the process, brokers can normally foresee things that may come up as an issue. They normally will look through the packs that you're going to present, look for your deal. They might bring up something that might trip up the funding needlessly. Okay, they can definitely help you in that respect. And of course, that requires some presentation from you. They can show you how to put the pack together. They can have a rounded pack of information when it goes to lenders, so that first impression is really good. Okay, and when the broker's always in the center of the deal, okay, so they can coordinate what's going on. It's the lender, it might be the solicitors, the lender solicitors plus your solicitors plus valuers and quantity surveyors and whatever they might be involved, okay? They're the oil that really keep things going. So if you're a new developer, they can of course explain the loan process and explain what's actually happening and why lenders need things, and they can actually bring that to life a little bit more rather than simply just a list of things that need to be done. It always makes it much better. So when lenders give their terms, okay, there are so many in the commercial world of lenders, there is no one set way of doing things. So lenders always have terms that look slightly different. They might charge their interest in a different way. Some might charge it on the whole loan from day one. Some might compound it. Some might not compound it. Some might charge a fee on the full GDV. Some might charge a fee on the total loan. There's so many different ones, and you can easily get tripped up by that and think that something looks a bit cheaper, but it's actually not. A broker can obviously just bring these forward for you, and they can show you what fees actually are there. Overall, what makes the most best sense. Okay, so catering for the finance products. Okay, what I mean by this, and also with the backup lenders, is the way that a good broker can look at your scenario is look at it holistically. So they can look at say, what actually have you got? So rather than just simply saying, well, you want me to do this, I'll do that. They can say, well, is there a better way? Can we use these assets? Can we draw some money from here because it's actually cheaper over the long term? Or is there a better way to make it more flexible for you? That is what you're really looking for, okay? Because then you'll look at the whole picture. And if you take into account then what your priorities are, what you're actually aiming for, it can actually result in a far better level of advice. So, of course, the backup lenders are one thing you can't do if you go directly to a lender. You cannot have an issue and then say, oh, okay, we can go to the next best one, try and use the same valuation and try and use the same QS if possible, and migrate everything over to a new lender, okay? You can have that, and it can often save deals from failing. Of course, the other one, they're there the whole way. So they are interested in starting the deal and getting it over the line and completed, okay? But good ones are there for the entire journey, all the way till the development's actually sold, and beyond, of course, because there's many things to discuss along the way. They're there to help, they're there to add value, and to ultimately keep you on track. So what this obviously transponds really into is the fact that you can crack on, find the deals, which is the hardest part of any development, in my opinion, is finding the deals, because they're out there. There are lots of deals out there, but there is lots of competition, and finding the good ones is where your hard work should be. So you should leave the professionals outside that to do all the work for you, while you crack on, find your deals, and crack on and make lots of money. Okay, so let's move quickly into these couple of things. I'm going to, because I'm aware that there's going to be some talk a little bit around HMOs today. I wanted to cover the kind of products you can use for HMO conversions. Okay, now there are two ways of doing this. One way is bridge to let products. Okay, they do not lend you the build, but they lend you just towards the purchase of the property. Okay, so they are coming to their own, and they're most ideal for HMO conversions that do not require planning. Or so generally that means up to 6, or it can also mean 6 if you're in an Article 4 area. But if they don't require planning and you can do all the works within permitted development rights, then you can use a bridge to let, and that might be beneficial for you. Okay. Now these lenders offer quite a very high LTV. Okay, they are a bit more punchy with their leverage, but they don't offer anything towards the build, of course. And how they do this is they know you're going to add value to it. So they offer you quite a high day one LTV. They allow you to do those works. And then with the same lender, you can refinance to a term product, okay, within 6 months at the higher value. That's the key there, okay? Whereas if you were going to change lender at that point in time, a lot of the time you have to wait 6 months to actually do that. And with this as well, on some of these lenders, you can pre-agree both of them at the same time. So it just takes out that little bit of uncertainty. You can also use the same lender for both, so the same lender for one and then the other. So there's many benefits, okay? And sometimes it can result in a lower fee for the term loan again as well. So, or sometimes no fee. So these are really good products. They're quite punchy. They're obviously designed for the lighter amount of works. So in other words, not too much of a heavy build budget. If you are going to use a heavy build, you would be better off using the one on the next slide, which I'm going to go through in a minute. What you can do with these as well is you've got other security. If you've got other buy-to-lets, you can use those as additional security, and you can often get up to 100% funding on the security property that you're actually buying, on the project you're actually doing. Okay, it is possible. So, so the refurbishment ones, okay, these are the ones which actually they lend you the build. They're for the chunkier projects. You need maybe the 6 or 7 or more bedroom HMOs that require planning. Maybe there's some structural works in there, and also key is here, your budget, your build budget is punchy here. You're going to be buying something for 300-400. You're going to be spending 200,000 on it. You know, it's going to be big. So what these are designed to do is actually lend you not just a good amount towards the purchase price, but also lend you the build too. Okay, and then they obviously you can draw down the build. You get the purchase amount on day one when you purchase it. You can draw down the build from the lender. There's some cracking products here. Lots of lender competition in this particular space. Again, quite punchy LTVs, not quite as high as the previous slide, but really good, really good. So these cater for your bigger products, and you can also use these for commercial conversions, for house into 2 flats, for conversions of offices into multiple flats. Okay, these are a really diverse range of products. They're kind of structured a bit like a bridge, where you have an entry fee but you don't have exit, because they're meant to be short term. You're meant to get in, get the work done, and get out. So there's some great products there. So if you want to know more about their LTVs and rates and the structure of them and what kind of lenders there are, then you'd have to contact me directly. I can't go through the specifics in these particular slides. So, but obviously I'd love to hear from you if you're interested. So I'm going to save this one and this one for a minute, because what I want to talk about is slightly left field. Okay, it's a slightly left field, but it does tie in to my kind of goal this year, personal goal. Okay, now my goal this year, of course, which we'll get to later, is to add value to as many property developers' businesses as possible. Okay, I want them to make as much money as humanly possible, and by doing that, I will be assessing what finance products they can use, what their total situation is, and how they can best move forward. Okay, using funding to help them. Okay, so I am really into self-development, things like this. Okay, and I recently saw a talk about someone who was talking about goal setting, and I thought it was really good. And it inspired me to actually say, right, I'll tell you what, actually, this is an area where I think the main reason, which I'm going to get onto a bit later, okay, the reason people don't actually set goals is because they don't know how to. Okay, I just think it's really complicated, and I think it's complicated. So I've always struggled with it too. So I thought I'm going to put a bit in here because I think it's actually going to help. Okay, that's why I think it's really important. So I hope you actually like it. I would actually, if you enjoy it, would be happy to do to incorporate some things like this in future talks. Okay, so just do let me know. So I'm going to concentrate just on the goals here. Okay, so what are goals? Okay, in my opinion, goals are milestone targets that we set ourselves, the attaining of which brings us closer to our ideal blueprint of life. Okay, or the best version of ourselves. What does that mean? That means everyone in their heads, okay, has this blueprint of their ideal life. Okay, so you know what it is that you would actually ideally like. You know your situation you'd like to be in. If you are doing things and your life is on a trajectory that is in line, and you think you're actually getting there, or you think you're moving towards it, that tends to be when you're most happy. Okay, because what you're doing, your actions are going towards what you actually see your life as ending up. Okay. They are objectives that you intensely desire in your life, otherwise they just wouldn't be goals because you wouldn't bother with them. Okay, and they are important to you because you actually have massive reasons for actually wanting them. Okay, which I'm going to get onto. Okay, now why would you set goals? Why do we need them? Okay, because I think this is what people just think, oh, what's the point? So I think the important thing is to take a look at this and say, well, okay, when everyone has to have something to aim for, okay, and certainly in our lives, we always end up somewhere. So say to take a 5-year chunk from now, 5 years time, you will land somewhere. Absolutely, that time is going to pass anyway. Okay, so it just depends on where you're going to end up. So a person without goals, okay, is a little bit like a sailing boat with no sensible rudder. So effectively, you're going and you're moving, but you're really just you can be blown off by various different forces, okay, and not end up where you actually want to go. So now it has been said that this skill is the number one. I've heard it. It's the number one thing that of actually having successful or success in life is setting goals that you can then actually aim for. It's actually quite a simple concept. This coupled with the fact that humans are, generally speaking, okay, they're happiest when they're actually aiming towards something they think is worthwhile. Okay, and this comes to people when people say they feel fulfilled. Okay, that's because they feel like they're part of something. They feel like they have some control over their lives, and they feel like they're aiming for something that's actually half decent. It's something that's important to them, so therefore they have reasons to get there. It gives them fulfillment every single time they work towards actually getting there. And so what happens is we end up being actually much happier when we're working towards something that we've clearly defined. Okay, so therefore it has a absolute double bonus on this one, because not only are you going to be able to set something that you can actually aim for, then achieve something in life, and then achieve the next thing, because these not massive things, they're broken down so you're making progress over the years. Okay, so you'll achieve it's one goal to another. So not only could you actually get the achievement and you get to actually move towards exactly what you want in life, but you also feel happy. Okay, it's brilliant. Okay, and the key here is that humans can, generally speaking, okay, almost, okay, achieve any goal they set for themselves, because as long as they have clear and strong reasons for wanting it, and they actually persist long enough to actually attain it, there is no reason why they wouldn't. Okay, so the last point on here, and this is really the main reason why I want to do it, is whether or not you know about the mental laws. I don't have time to go through them today, but I'm happy if you ask a question at the end to tell you what they are. But the mental laws of the universe are always in force. Okay, so if you're actually using them to your advantage, they really help you. Okay, but if you're not, they're always in force anyway. So they are just guiding you here, there, and everywhere. So I can potentially, if someone's got a question, they know about what those are, I can. But for now, I'm going to move forward. So, okay, great. So if goals are so amazing, yeah, then why don't people do it? Why doesn't everyone go out and say, this is absolutely awesome, I'm going to set the goals and then I'm going to achieve, and everyone wins? Okay, well, there's 5 easy main reasons. One, people are not serious about these goals. Okay, lots of people would actually like to do these things, but really they don't actually want to put the effort in, or don't really want to pay the price to actually get to the goal they want to achieve. Okay, that's normally anyway because their reasons for doing it they're not strong enough. They don't actually really want those things. So the fear of failure, okay, is a huge thing. Okay, it's what most people don't. And honestly, it's the fear of failure, not failure itself, that people worry about. It's only because they fear it. The actual failure is not an issue. If you just fail quickly, you'd learn from it. But the fear of it is what stops people. So, and I've highlighted this one because this is the one I'm actually going to cover. Okay, they don't know how to set goals effectively. Okay, which I think is the main one, if I'm honest. But some people sort of effectively, they think they have goals because they say, you know, oh, in my head, I sort of want to be here, and actually it'd be nice to be there, or it'd be nice to earn more, or have a different job, or something like that. And they're vague things, and they try and hold them in their mind. Okay, and then what happens is they set at the beginning of the year, and then by the time life gets busy, they lose track of what they're doing. Okay, so one of them is the fear of criticism, because some people think, well, if you sort of say, oh, well, I've got this goal, I've got that, people will actually sort of ridicule you. And so some people are actually worried about that. Of course, there's also the society norms where someone says, well, who are you to kind of think you're going to kind of achieve this or push yourself up? And that's where the crabs in the bucket analogy comes in, which I've heard before, which is effectively like when you get crabs in a bucket, if one tries to climb out, all the other ones try and put it back in again. And so that can be a bit of a fear for everyone, okay, that they kind of, everyone tries to kind of keep them where they are. And the other one is they don't understand the power of setting goals or not setting them, okay, because there's always, like I said, these mental laws of the universe are always guiding us, and we don't realize it, but we're always on a sort of we're always in a direction going somewhere, and we need to make sure it's pointing in the right direction. Okay, so I hope that's clear. So how do you set a goal? So look, basically, I love to keep things simple. Okay, this looks like it's really complicated, 10 steps and all this sort of stuff, but this is just a guide. This is what I take from the many things that I've read, because I really like this particular area. So I always think keeping things as simple as possible is the way forward. If I make things complicated, it's just never going to get done. So make it sort of, I guess, complexity I find is just a barrier to getting things done. So the more simplistic you can make something, the more likely you are to actually execute the plan, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to take you something. This is really simple. Let's go through it, and I'll explain what I mean by each section. And I think this really works, by the way, personally. Okay, but what it is most people just never sit down for half an hour and do it. Okay, so right, I'm going to do this for one goal because it's so much easier. You can have as many as you want. Okay, as many goals as you want, and you should have more than one, probably, because there's all different areas in life. Okay, but obviously if you have absolute tons, then you're diluting your efforts all over the place. If you definitely wanted to achieve one thing and you picked one, you're much more likely to achieve it, but you may have more than one, okay, to actually get where you want to go. So so number one, okay, you're sitting down to do this. Number one is to actually be in a great state. Okay, no one wants to set their goals when they're feeling absolutely knackered, or at the end of the day when they're feeling absolutely hopeless, or their brain just doesn't want to think about anything. What you need to do is it needs to be at a time of the day when you feel best. For lots of people, that's the morning. Some people, it is the evening. It might be after, it's typically, okay, after you've exercised, after you've been for a walk, something like that. So make sure you're in a peak state for this type of exercise. So once you've done that, it doesn't matter what you need to do. If you need to run on the spot, do some jumping jacks, whatever it might be, okay? But it gets you going, okay? So then what you do is, on your pad of paper, write down a list of all the things you can think of, okay, that you'd like to achieve in your life, okay? And obviously you don't have to go absolutely nuts on this, okay? But you're generally liking some things that you actually want. And it would be good if there were some specific things, okay, rather than I'd like to be thinner or I'd like to be more wealthy. It'd be good if there were actual numbers or, you know, calculations, so they were measurable, okay? So, and obviously I've said 5 minutes because you can go on forever like this. I mean, you know, it is non, you know, it's endless. If you had a big enough pad, I'm sure you could carry on, but just literally do it for 5 minutes because it brings out the most things that are most clear in your mind. Your subconscious effectively is bringing out the things that are important to you. Then when you've got that list, okay, look at it and just say, well, in effect, imagine if someone could say, look, if you could pick one of those things, but you could definitely achieve it in 12 months, okay, what would you pick? Okay, so do this and pick just that one, right? Because that's going to mean the most to you. It's going to make the most impact in your life if just that one thing happens, okay? Then turn over the piece of paper, or go to a fresh page. Okay, so write down that chosen goal at the top. All right, and then this is where the important thing comes in. This is where the engine that actually drives it comes in. So then write down 3 reasons, or at least 3. I'm just making these numbers up, by the way. 3 reasons why you want to actually achieve the goal. Okay, this is absolutely massive, because if you don't have really good reasons, you're just never really going to bother actually trying. As in, you will, but your will, your actual effort, you're just pushing forward, will eventually wear away. Whereas if you've got reasons you really want to do it, you'll be pulled towards it. Okay, so 3 reasons at least that you want to, that you desire this goal. Okay, and 3 ways the achievement of this goal will make you feel. So when you've actually achieved this, or you become this person, or you're doing that, how will you feel when it comes to that? Okay, so these will become important a bit later down. So underneath that goal, so do a little line underneath. Say, oh, great, that's where I am. So, and again, I'm just making up the number 15. Okay, I just thought of that amount, but and the more the better. But write down 15 things that you could do towards the achievement of that goal that you're maybe not doing now. Okay, so generally what happens is, when people have goals, they can, because you can think of them, you can actually conceive them, and you can actually put them on a piece of paper, it's likely you can achieve them. That's the first thing. The second thing is you generally know what to do. So everyone who has a business, who's doing developments, or who's doing whatever it might be, if you guys are out there, you're doing property developments and you want to scale your business up, you generally know what to do. Okay, but it's just a case of organizing it and putting it in place and taking one step at a time. Okay, so let's call it 15 things. So you'll find that the first 3, 5, 7 are like fairly easy. You'll just rattle them off. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get up a little bit earlier. I'm going to get 1 book on the subject, and I'm going to read 10 pages a day, whatever it might be. Okay, these are just examples. But when you get down to the last ones, you're going to be really struggling. You're going to say, well, I've already put down, I'm going to do a course on the subject, or I'm going to visit the person that I wanted to see more, and I'm going to make 3 arrangements with them, like every month, or whatever it might be. Okay. The last ones are always really hard. So you have to think a lot. So it might take you a little bit of time to do that. Okay. So then what you want to do is, when you put all of those things, okay, some of them are going to make more impact than others. Okay. So then you order those in what's going to make the most impact towards that goal. Okay. You write down a plan of when you're going to put those in action. Okay. So it might be that you've written down 15 things, and you say, oh, great, I'm going to action one of those things every month. So once I've got one, I'll do one for a month. And then when I've got that underway, I'll add another one. Okay. And then the really important point here is, because you've just decided that this is really important to you, and because you've decided that, let's just say it was a goal that, for ease, because it's easier measurable, let's just say, look, your plan was to make £100,000 this year of extra income. Okay, by the end of the year, £100,000, and it's the exact amount, and you're trying to do it by the end of the year. So you've got an exact date in your mind. So what you can do here is, the key is, because you've decided that's going to be important to you, because it's going to make you feel more financially secure. It's going to make you able to invest in another income generating asset. It's going to make your family feel more secure. It's going to make you feel more relaxed and be more present, or whatever those important reasons are. Okay. Now, because you've decided that, the key is, because you've made a decision, is to take action. Number 7, take action on the first one immediately. Absolutely, literally, as you're doing this exercise, whatever you're doing, send an email to someone, book a course, order a book, whatever it is you're doing. But taking action immediately just gets that thought process going. It actually brings it to life. Okay, so what you've actually taken action. Okay, you need monitoring throughout the year. So you've got your goal. It's simple. You've got your reasons. You've got your things you're going to do, and you put them in order. And you've done the first one. We've at least taken action towards getting the first action done. So you need milestones across the year. Obviously, if it's a £100,000 goal, that's fairly easy, because you're saying, right, okay, well, when you get to the middle of the year, have you made 50 grand? When you get 2 months in, have you made £16,800 or whatever it is? Okay. You can monitor that, and you can say, am I behind or ahead? And you can actually see how many deals have I got lined up, and what properties have I got? How many viewings am I going to? And you can up them or as you need, and change things as you go. Okay. Okay. So that's the action part of getting your goal done. Okay. But the magic comes when you are looking at your goal, and you've got your goal neatly down, and you keep your goal somewhere where you're going to see it in the morning and the evening. Okay. The magic starts when you read that goal on the morning, and you read it in the evening. So ideally when you wake up in the morning, because your brain waves maybe are such that you can take in that information quite easily. Okay. And at night as well, because you're just about to go to sleep, and you can let as you're asleep, you can let your subconscious mind kind of work out the next thing you're going to do. Okay, because it sounds really weird, but it does actually do that. So reading them, but whilst you actually read them, or after you've read them, okay, then visualize yourself having actually attained the goal. Now, this actually is quite difficult, and most people find this quite difficult, and that's because it is. Okay, it is really difficult, but with practice, I think it gets a bit easier. You visualize yourself having actually attained that goal, okay, and harnessing the reasons you wrote down earlier. So number 4, the reasons you wrote down, harnessing those having been met, okay, and the feelings you actually put down there, the feelings of success, feeling of yes, I've done it, or the feeling of like, relax, I want, what a great year, or I feel so much better now because I've caught up with this person, or I see my family a lot more, my connection with them is so much better, or my goal weight and I've done a half marathon, or whatever it might be, okay? When you're doing that, you are programming your subconscious mind, okay, to bring those things that you're imagining and make your life like that. That's effectively what it's doing. So your subconscious mind is the prover, okay? It's something that the more things you think about, your predominant thoughts, okay, get into your subconscious mind then shows you why your life is like what you think about, okay? I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but if you imagine you get some people who are like really negative, okay, so someone who's like really negative and they're always looking, people are annoying, or I'm always getting stuck in traffic, okay? Those people always get stuck in traffic, and they always come across annoying people. That's because they are looking for that. Their subconscious mind is saying those are important things to you, and they are noticing what's annoying about something rather than noticing what's good about it, okay? And so this is the power of that particular thing. And there's something called a reticular activator system, okay, in your brain. And what it does is it filters out all things that are going on in your body that are normal functions that you don't need to know about, like the pace of your heart or your breathing or whatever it might be, okay? And it lets in the things that it thinks are important to you. And the only reason it thinks they're important to you is because those are your dominant thoughts that are going through your mind and getting into your subconscious mind, okay? So this is why when you do something for the first time, or you decide I'm going to do some golf, or I'm going to start getting into this or take some golf lessons, suddenly you notice people playing golf, or you notice someone who's carrying a golf club, or you notice someone who's playing some golf clubs since their boot. You do pick up those things, and they were always there before, but you never would have noticed them, because what you're doing is they're now important to you. They're part of your life. Golf is now something you do. So you notice people playing golf, you notice someone talking about golf, or you hear someone talking about golf on the other side of the room, and you go and have a chat with them about it. You wouldn't have heard that maybe before, okay? This is why it's important to keep these things in there, go through your goals and the reasons why you want to achieve them, okay? And of course, in this, the point is actually really enjoy this process. The point is to not make it too complicated, just do it every day, and feel excited about the fact that you're actually working towards your goals. What you can do is sometimes you can get a bit demoralized when you're doing it, like when you're doing something that's a year sort of work, or 3 months milestones at a time. You can get those days where you're bewildered, you're tired, you're not quite sure whether it's actually worth achieving them or not. And the only way you do that is to go back to the reasons, your original piece of paper, and you read why you're actually doing it, and those remind you that it's actually all worth it, and it's all just part of the struggle. So because of your efforts involved, because you're taking action, and because you're doing all these things, you will actually feel like you deserve the goal, okay? So the more action you take towards it, the more you feel like you deserve it, the more likely you are to actually achieve it. It's just a bit of a steamroll effect. It's a bit of a snowball effect, okay? So yeah, okay, great. I think we've covered that one. So that's my simple goal setting structure. Now, as I was mentioned before, we have a company mission, which is effectively our goal, although it's not really a goal per se, because in my opinion, it doesn't actually have, well, it doesn't have an exact amount. I'm not saying, right, I'm going to have 100 developers, okay? So this is more a company mission statement, okay? So, and this is our mission statement, right? So because of the wide-ranging ways that you can structure your property developments in terms of the funding, because of there's so many lenders out there and so many products, good advice is key. So our mission is to provide researched and thought through funding solutions for property developers. And the key is for us, taking into account the whole picture, take into account their priorities with a long-term view. We're not literally just looking for, okay, well, what's the quickest thing we can do to just get this thing done? That is not the way it goes. We need to look at where you're trying to end up, and then you can actually work back and advise you correctly, okay? So overall, what we're trying to do is add as much value to property developers as possible, okay? through highlighting the ways they can use commercial finances for their property development projects, and of course to grow their business and scale up and do whatever they need to do. Okay. Of course, today I was trying to do it by highlighting how to set goals as well. So just to mix it up. So can we help you this year? Okay. Can we help you achieve your goals this year? Okay. By looking at your scenario. Okay. What we're offering here is it's a free consultation. Okay. Can we spend an hour having a chat on a Zoom? Just relax, chat. You know, we don't even have to actually go forward and actually do any finance, but I'd love to hear where you are in your business. What do you want? Where do you actually want to go? What do you want to achieve? What kind of developments do you want to do? What are you doing now? Maybe you want to scale up your developments and you're wondering what's the next step in terms of finance? You know, what are the different structures I can use? Is there first, second charges? How can I use MES? Are there developers that will, you know, lend really high LTV, whatever it might be? You know, it would be great to know where you are, because if I can, what I love most of all is to be able to add value to your business, to be able to add value to property developers' projects. Okay, if I can do that, that makes me happy, and that is my end goal here. So I am going to. That was actually only 32 minutes. Okay, so of course, if you've got any questions, you may have some. Love to answer some questions if you've got them. But if not, then of course I'll hand back to Rob, who can sort of jig us on to the next one. Thanks for listening. You there, Rob?
Yes, I am. Just had to unmute myself. Yes, interesting. Very interesting. Goal setting is a good one, isn't it?
I think your signal's not good.
Have you read Think and Grow Rich? Is one of them?
Of course I have. Yeah. And everyone should read it. In my opinion, you should definitely go and buy it. If it's not a book you've read, then you should pop onto Amazon or another bookstore or whatever, and go and read it. It's a bit complicated read, but there's loads of other explanations on it if you do some research. It's broken down into like 13 different tools that if you master them, then in his opinion, it guarantees success. It's literally been around since, for like 100 years or something. It's absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, good. And there was another one that said, do you teach goal setting? But I think you've answered that.
Yeah, no, I don't actually, but it's just something I really enjoy it. I think it's a fantastic subject, and I think if people can harness it, what happens is most people just don't actually look at it and do it. That's the only thing that separates the people from who do really well and people who don't. Is only just is that they actually do their goals properly. And don't get me wrong, I am terrible at goals. I know I'm going through it now. I'm not good at setting them. I'm only recently just really knuckled down to actually do it properly. If I'm honest.
You're not the only one.
Yeah, most people just don't do it.
I think that was the only questions that I saw. If there are no other questions, I'll say thank you very much, Will.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Yeah, great stuff. And we'll talk to Mike. Hello, Mike. Good evening.
Good evening.
There you are.
Oh, gosh.
Gotcha.
I'm here. Yeah, thank
You're
you
here.
for that. The goal setting is always interesting, isn't it? It's the time of year for it all when people are thinking about it. It's never. The other thing is, it's never too late, is it? It's never too late to set your goals, because people go, "Oh, I haven't done it this year. I'll go and do it next year." Why wait? Just set your goals whenever.
I so agree. That's the one thing people do. They think of January to December, and it's like you can make a decision any second to completely
Like
change.
the first week of February.
Yeah,
Like the first week of February. So everybody set your goals.
exactly.
Yeah, and on that book, I on my travels, I met this guy, and we got on very well and started chatting. And it turned out that he was a multi-billionaire, and he'd come from nothing, and he swore by the book Think and Grow Rich. And he had one of the basically the story. I'll tell you the story actually that he told me how he got hold of a copy. So he was working as a valet parker. So he came from nothing, came from absolutely nothing. And he was working in a valet parker in one of the restaurants in California. He was Canadian, but he'd gone down to California. Hopefully everyone will find this interesting, but it certainly shows the power of the book. So I thought I'd tell a little story before I start, which is he basically, if they see a really expensive car, they would, all hustle each other to try and go and park the car. And that when they came back, they'd get a nice tip. So basically, I think this Ferrari turned up. So he pushed all the valet parkers out of the way, managed to get the key, got the car. I think he did a bit of a Ferris Bueller's day off and went a few laps around the car park because it was a nice car, and then parked up. And when the car came back, he obviously went to get it and came back. And he held out his hand, as they kind of do, to get a tip. And he put like a really small tip in his hand, and he was like, "What the hell is this?" And then he, because he was quite surprised, because generally there's a correlation between the tip and the car. And the guy then took I think it was $1 bill or something, took it back, and he was like, "Oh my God!" But then he wrote on it, and he wrote "Think and Grow Rich" by Napoleon Hill, and gave it back to him. And he kept hold of this $1 bill. And now you're thinking of the law of attraction. And he said, every day I'd pass this bookshop. And then he said one day he passed, and this book caught his eye, and it was Think and Grow Rich in the window of the bookstore. And he pulled out the $1 bill, and it was on there. So he thought, oh, I wonder what that's about. Went in, bought the book. It was one of the most original copies. I think, quite an original old copy. And he started following it and read it. He said he just couldn't stop putting it down, and he followed all the principles. And when I'd met him, he'd sold several companies for several £billion. So he certainly did Think and Grow Rich. So, and he said that was my Bible. He said I carried that everywhere I went. So yeah,
Awesome story.
So quite an interesting story about Think and Grow Rich. Definitely. So definitely worth a book. If you haven't read it, read it. So I just need to share my screen. Is that right, to get the charts up, and then I'll
I suppose I should introduce you.
Yes, you can introduce me.
Yes. Good evening, folks. Here we have Mr. Mike Frisby, property entrepreneur. I've met him once before, and he's wonderfully come along and decided to come and join us. And here he is.
Yeah, hi, evening, everybody. I recognise some of the faces and names that are there, and probably haven't met everybody there. So if we're meeting for the first time, nice to meet you all. Although it's not in person, but actually this is quite a convenient way of doing everything, isn't it? And I'm sure we're all used to sitting in our homes now and not travelling so far to get on with it. So what you'll learn today. So today I'm going to talk about social housing. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and a little bit around social housing. So you'll learn how to exactly implement some of these strategies that will increase your cash flow, how to navigate universal credit, housing benefit, and avoid bad tenants, how to maximize your profits in your portfolio, how you can actually get started without owning any property, and a little bit about what some of my mentees and things, because I work with people and have been working with people for over a decade to help them on their property investment journey, like many of the speakers here today. If you watch through to the end, I'm going to show you how you can get a chapter in a book that I was featured in. I kind of wrote a chapter. It was a bestseller on Amazon. And you can get that chapter in the book, and also some YPN articles that I've written too. So I'm going to talk about universal credit. What is universal credit? It is kind of the new, it's not that new anymore, but it is the benefit system that is out there that basically combines all the different benefits. What happened was the government thought, well, this is, and it was the coalition government led by Ian Duncan Smith in terms of the department that he was running, basically wanted to make it easier for people to go back to work. And when you're not in work, or when you claim benefits, or a low paid job, you can claim benefits. There are so many different types of benefits you can claim. It all gets a bit confusing if you earn an extra pound. So for every extra pound, all these benefits change. So it's very hard for someone to work out if they're going to be better off or if they're not. So the idea was to make it, to incentivize people to work, make sure people were better off, and to wrap it all up and combine the different functions. And it is run by the DWP instead of all the different individual departments that they were running it. So basically, universal credit includes job seekers allowance, housing benefit, working tax credit, child tax credit, employment and support allowance, and income support. So that is all rolled up into one monthly payment. So that is what's happened there. So they have simplified, therefore, all of those payments into one payment, one universal credit payment. They assess things differently. Obviously, each one has its own assessment, but it comes out in one payment. You know, back in the day when they were running a very much a dual system in terms of job seekers allowance and earning support allowance, you'd get 1 week, you'd get that payment, and the next week you'd get your housing benefit payment. And generally, if you're a tenant, you receive housing benefit every other week and job seekers allowance every other week. Now they get one monthly payment, just like a wage. So it's on a monthly payment system. What was left outside of that in the benefit system was disability living allowance. That's become known as PIP, personal independence payment, and also they kept basically the pension system out of that, because that's a really big political hot potato, because there are so many pensioners and most of them vote, I think a lot of them vote Conservative. So the Conservatives or an alliance with the Conservatives wouldn't want to touch that too much, because it's probably not a vote winner. So what is universal credit made up of? You have your standard allowance. So standard allowance is basically you know, your job seekers allowance or your earning support allowance if you're earning a little bit. So it's your subsistence payment. You know, it's to help you cover costs such as you know, your living expenses, your bills, your food, you know, your clothes or anything like that that you would normally spend. Then if you have children, you might get, there's some benefits around children that you can get. And then obviously there's an element that is for housing. So they look at your rents and what you qualify for, which is obviously the section that I'm going to talk most about tonight. And then you've got additional, if you have any additional needs, so maybe you've got some disability allowance or you need some carers and those kind of things. And all of that is wrapped up into one, as I said, one payment. And that makes your universal credit payment. Basically, that is then paid to you. But if you get any other income that is not earned, i.e., so for example, if you had some money in a savings account somewhere, you earned £1 of interest, they would take £1 off your universal credit payment. If it's working money, then it's sort of 65% taken off, so you keep you know, most of the money that you actually earn. And then once they've looked at that, they then basically give you a universal credit award, and that's what gets paid to you. In COVID, you know, there's lots of support was handed out in many different areas of, you know, there was the bounce back loans, there's all sorts of stuff, wasn't there, that they handed out. And one of the key things that they did, because there were so many people, there was a big increase in claimants through that period, was that they also increased the housing element of universal credit. So there was a big step up. It was a big shift in what was basically paid out on behalf of tenants, partly because there's more tenants, so more people needed to afford houses that they could live in, or if you were living in a house, then you didn't necessarily need to move, you could just claim benefits. But partly because over time, the rates that they set had lagged a little bit, because they'd capped the amount that they could increase over time, and they were readjusting that back to the 30th percentile of all private rents in that area. And I'll go through a little bit about how it all works, but basically you get an area, you look at what all the rents are in that area, and then they set the LHA rate. So you'll hear me talk about various different terms, and that's because basically there's been changes in the system, but they still use all these different words for that. So that's a little bit an insight into universal credit, but very much I'm going to talk a little bit about myself now. And I'm very much about how did I get into property and why did I get into property? But it's all about creating options for yourself so you're in control or you would be controlled. And I think it's more relevant now than ever because, you know, the whole of COVID and everything like that, people have realized that there's much less stability in the world than they thought. So I started my career out in working in brand marketing and strategy, and I worked for some big brands like Guinness and also Unilever. Unilever does things like Magnum ice cream, PG Tips, Persil, Dove, Lynx, and I worked in the personal care side, so I worked on brands like Lynx and Dove, amongst others that were there. But they also do Marmite, love it or hate it. But I did enjoy that. But like any corporate world, things change, and it wasn't really for me. I always wanted to run my own business. I was always far more entrepreneurial. So I always looked for opportunities. I started to look for opportunities to make money elsewhere, which is, I'm sure, where a lot of you are currently, starting out in your property investment career to boost your income. So really, I wanted to earn more money and be able to make the lifestyle choices I wanted. Not to be a corporate slave, so I was accountable for everything. I could only blame myself if things went wrong. If things went well, I could also rely on it. But really, I didn't like, as I said, it always changing. You're not necessarily in control. And I didn't necessarily fit. Why didn't I fit? I think because I thought entrepreneurially. I was also dyslexic. So in my corporate days, lots of emails flying around, people covering their back, lots of long emails, wasn't necessarily me. But what dyslexia has given me is, I think, a valuable entrepreneurial trait, which is a drive. It's also given me different ways. I'm really solution focused. I think I can see things differently. And certainly when it comes to things like floor plans and seeing how to construct deals, it's something that I find very easy and help a lot of people do. So really, I feel blessed that I've got this type of talent, because I think it's, I love it and the way I look at the world. So I'm very creative and solution focused. So we've done a little bit on goal setting tonight, but also I think it's really important to understand your whys. Why are you doing all of this property investing? What is driving you through this? Because when times get tough, and it always gets tough in property, no property is simple to buy, I think, or certainly no property deal is ever that simple to buy. Understand your whys. What is driving you? And I certainly knew and understood my drives when I stepped out of the corporate world. There was an opportunity to take redundancy. I did, and I went out and bought lots of property because I wanted to set up my business. I wanted to run a business through property, and hence why I've set up the Property Business Accelerator Educational Group. But so entrepreneurship was always my passion, and I did it through property, and I've been loving it ever since. And I've been out of the corporate world now for over 15 years. We're in 2022 now, so it's probably 16 years. And through that time, I've analysed over 1,000 deals. I've mentored over 1,000 clients, many now financially independent. And I've had hundreds of tenants, some of the benefit tenants, and I've also done a lot of professional tenants, student tenants. So done most things in property, residential property, and I've consulted on probably over £20 million worth of property deals. I focus on high yields. So I'm an investor that focuses on high yields. How do I get high yields? I get high yields by buying at good value. I get high yields through HMOs. I've got high yields through social housing. I've got high yields through multi-unit blocks. For me, that's a really, really good strategy at the moment. I think we just touched on some of those, that are a little bit harder. Often the deals that work well are the harder ones to finance. So it's always useful to know and understand all about financing. And I also run several property businesses. One is obviously my own investment business and development business. One is a rental business, and one is helping others also on the property training ladder. And also I have recently just launched a property investment fund, and at the moment trying to work with some wealthy people to invest in that fund, where we'll buy multi-unit blocks for that. And that's one of my favorite strategies. If you want to know a bit more about that strategy and also how to commercially finance stuff, I've always held cheese and wine events in the city. They obviously have been off since COVID, and this year we're bringing them back. And the first one is Friday the 11th, between 1 and 4:30. This is essentially, there is a cost to the event because we provide wine and cheese and we have a room hire. But essentially it just covers that. I think one or two people who are on here today has been, so hopefully they'll testify that the value that it's there. Everyone seems to enjoy it because there's wine flowing. If you don't drink wine, it's fine. There's no pressure to, but it's good Friday afternoon banter and knowledge as well. If you do want to book onto that, there is a bit.ly link. It's a bit long, I know. I'll come back to it, I think, at the end, or just email pa@mikefrisbee.co.uk. Tickets are on Eventbrite, so if you searched Eventbrite under my name as well, you'd probably find them. So there's only a handful of tickets, so the event is very small. I think there's about 10, 11 people can fit into the room, and it's in London a week on Friday. So we've only just launched it. So jump in quick, because I'm sure they will fly out the door. And I go through many of my deals, many of my HMO commercially financed deals, my multi-block deals, semi-commercial, commercial and resi deals. So it's more than just HMO these days, but there's still a lot on HMOs if you're doing HMOs, but how to commercially finance and work with that. And also I run a podcast, so do check my podcast out, listen to my podcast, like my podcast, all on the things, and I love doing that. And if you've got an interesting story to share, give me a shout and I'll interview you on my podcast. Always interested to talk to investors. So anybody on here who wants to come on and be a guest, or if you've got any topics you want me to cover, give me a shout out. Drop it in the chat or let Rob know, and do get in contact, and we're happy to talk to people. So as I said, I escaped the corporate world. There was an opportunity to leave, so I did. And I focused, and the other key, I think, with all of these goals, don't set too many of them, and focus on them. Be very, very focused. The more focused you are, I think the better the results you get. If you spread yourself too thinly, you won't get anywhere. I have done a lot of things in property, but I kind of focus on one thing at a time. Rather than trying to do every single strategy under the sun, I've done most strategies, but that's because I've focused on them sequentially rather than all at once together. So I went out and bought loads of property. The credit crunch, just as I thought, great, I've got this lick, the credit crunch happened and all of my quick refinancing couldn't go on. And therefore I was looking for ways to really boost the income out of my properties. Again, I thought about HMOs. I bought my first HMO over 16 years ago, really liked them. But, I couldn't convert a lot of the properties I had into HMOs. They were too small, or they were flats, or there were lots of different things. So I was searching for other strategies to boost my income through this period. And that's where I basically fell upon social housing and housing benefits and all of that. So I'm just going to take you through housing benefit. I'm going to call it housing benefit. It's the housing element of universal credit, as it's now known, or housing benefit is still referred to as housing benefit, and just take you through some of the things. So within social housing, there are kind of three sections, and there's kind of a third, very roughly, which is a third is run by local authorities. That's the term council housing that you all hear about, run and owned by council housing. And basically you're given a council house, you qualify on a point system, and then you can move in, you get cheap rent, and you can stay in it as long as you want. As long as you're paying for the rent. So once you get in, you don't need to leave. So even if you, then go off and earn lots of money, you can still stay in your local authority house and cheap. And obviously under Margaret Thatcher, she did the right to buy scheme. So a lot of them were then sold off to burgeoning, to people who are doing quite well. So they bought their own and started to own local authority houses. So then they needed other people to come in and sort of replace some of that stock, and that's where housing associations come in. So they're very similar. They're not run by local authorities, they're run by housing associations, but essentially very, very similar to, you qualify again generally through a point system and stuff. And then there's also people who come in and out of benefits or need housing and they don't have space in council houses, because you always hear of these long lists for council housing. And that is provided by us landlords in the private rental sector. And in order to pay the rent, they claim housing benefits. So that is us. That pot of money every year is over 20 billion pounds. So to pay for all of this every year, the rental bill is over 20 billion pounds on housing benefit every year. One of the biggest budgets within the government spend, which is quite interesting. And so when housing benefit turned into local housing allowance, basically the whole country was split up into what was known as broad market rental areas. And broad market rental areas basically set rents. So those rates that you saw earlier on, those are some of the areas that I invest in: the Portsmouth, the Crawleys, the Guildfords of this world, because I live in Surrey, but I invest across the southeast, do a lot in Portsmouth, do a fair bit in Guildford, do a bit in Crawley, and dotted in a few other places as well. As I said, I'm going to take Portsmouth for this example. And so the broad market rental area I do a lot of investing is the Portsmouth one. I do a lot of investing in Portsmouth. Portsmouth itself is the LHA rates just slightly under market rents, I would say, because you've got a place called Petersfield, which is quite high in rents, a bit more affluent, helping to bring up the average in that area. And then you've got a place called Gosport that brings down the average in the area, so it evens out. But property prices are cheaper in Gosport. So if you buy a property in Gosport and charge LHA rates, which is going to be above market rent, you can get better yields by letting to a social housing tenant than even a private tenant, which a lot of people don't know and understand. So it's doing things cleverly and wisely that can really help boost your yields on property. So that is a good strategy, because every broad market rental area will have cheaper properties within them, and that would normally get lower rent than you can achieve through social housing, because it's social housing rates for that area. The LHA rates for that area are set by averages. It may be the third average, but it means that a third of properties are probably undercharging rent that they should be paying, because if you don't charge the LHA rate, the tenant can't claim the LHA rate. And basically, it doesn't make a big difference to them whether they're being charged £100 a week or £110 a week if their entitlement is £110 a week, because they can't claim the extra £10. So it doesn't make any difference to them. If, however, you were set the rent at £100 a week, then that housing benefit would be paid at £100 a week. So always remember to set your rents at the LHA rates. They issue them on a weekly, but as in, you know, weekly rents. That's why I'm talking weekly rents. I always think in monthly rents normally, but that's how they do it, in weekly rents. So housing benefits paid of the lowest of the local housing allowance rate or the actual rent. So remember to set all your rents at least at the local housing allowance rate. I often find there are landlords out there who have housing benefit tenants, haven't put their rent up for a long time. If you weren't aware that rates have changed, you should be changing all your rents to reflect what those new rates are, increasing basically income out of your portfolio. Those are just some basic stuff that you should know. I'm just going through the basic stuff. An example here of what I did was I took, as I said, I call them MUBs, multiple unit businesses, blocks. And this was one of them. And one of the units within that block, i.e. their block of flats, it was a bit smaller, and I rented the rest to professionals. And this one, I used to have to lower the rent at the time. This is back in quite a long time ago that I bought this. The rent in that time at that time was like 625. The LHA rate was 725. So of course, I then let that to a LHA person who was entitled to benefits. Lots of people needed accommodation, so there was no problem finding them, and I charged 725. So all of a sudden, I would struggle to get a professional in there. I'd have to lower the rent, but I could charge more rent for a housing benefit tenant, and there were lots of them queuing up to try and take it at that price. So because I would accept housing benefits where a lot of other people wouldn't. So that is a very simple way of increasing rents, and I'm illustrating here there are particular properties or particular locations that might have lower market rent than the actual LHA rate. The other thing is, basically what they did is they separated out the property and the claiming unit, i.e. it's the household that counts towards how much you get, not the property. So the property in some ways is irrelevant to what you can claim, because if you qualify for a 3-bed rate because of your family makeup, you'd get the 3-bed rate if you live in a 3-bed property, but you still get the 3-bed rate even if you live in a 2-bed property. And you would only get the 3-bed rate if you lived in a 4-bed property. So it works both ways, but basically that's what you're qualified to. How you spend your money as a family is up to you. People say, well, why would you go in a slightly smaller house? Well, you know, 2-bed properties can have a lot of reception rooms. Maybe you can use one of the reception rooms as a bedroom. Maybe they can't afford a 3-bed house in the area. So they might be quite happy to come and live in your 2-bed house that has a lower rent than the 3-bed rate in your area. That's something I did that in the Guildford area, actually, and I'll come on to that later on and show you some of my examples of how I increased rent. Some of these rents are quite old and low, because I always like to do it at the point I change, so you can see the differential rather than suppose what I might have achieved under private rents. Now, so the local housing allowance principles are, it's the individuals or the family units that count in the property. Also, you can have more than one tenant in there claiming separately, because if you've got John and his friend living together for whatever reason, you know, when you're young, you might live together in a flat or somewhere else. But if you're both unemployed and friends living together, you both have your own universal credit claims. So you'd also have your own rent liabilities. Therefore, you can have, might be on one AST, but you might be running your lives fairly independent, therefore not a joint claim. Therefore, you can have more than one claim within a household. So that's how you do it. Yeah. Rates are based on the bedrooms required, as I went through. So depending on your family makeup or the claiming unit, and that is quite interesting, because there are many ways of looking at that and doing that, and ages of children and all of those types of things. And housing benefits paid are the lowest of the local housing allowance rate or the actual rent. It is also a means tested benefit. So I'm just going to go and run through some examples of some of my more what I call advanced strategies. This here was one of the houses I bought when I was out buying loads and loads of properties. Basically the market rent at the time when I bought this was about 725. I basically bought it below market value, did some work to it, refinanced it, pulled quite a lot of money out. That is one of the themes that I seem to run with a lot, is recycling my cash a lot, and that's what we go through on that commercial cheese and wine afternoon. But I achieved through the LHA at the time £1,000. I still have LHA tenants in there. It has now gone up to, I think, 1,185 that I get out of it. I still only have 2 tenants in there, so it's a 3-bedroom house. It's not, I'm not cramming loads of people in there, but it's understanding how you claim. These tenants, the current tenants, have been in this property now 5-6 years. So a lot of these tenants stay a long time. Not having a turnover in your property makes your property so more profitable. If you ever have a turnover in your property, you're going to have higher maintenance bills, you have a bit of a void, you have potentially agency costs to move in new tenants and all of those kind of things. So keeping your tenants staying longer is also hugely profitable, but keeping tenants who pay more than the market rate in your property for longer is even better. That became known on the property circuit as a 2+2, because I'm allocating rooms to the 2 individual tenants. And by doing that, they qualify for the 1-bedroom rate as opposed to a sharer's rate, which means that it is deemed in the eyes of the council or housing benefit as like the equivalent of a 1-bed flat. So it was known as a 2+2 because I gave them each two rooms. Life's moved on a little bit since then, but that strategy still very much works under universal credit, and is one of my favorite strategies in this sector, where you take small terraced houses or even flats, put a couple of people in them and really boost the rents. They also work really well in you know, blocks of flats and those kind of things, if you have those kind of arrangements. So a couple of students who I mentored and taught along the way, they've done similar things. This is an ex-local authority house in the south of England. And basically they moved their rent from 775 to 1140, increasing the profit to 650. They took a 2-bed ex-local authority with a very large main bedroom with 2 windows, and created a 3-bedroom house so that they could allocate 2 rooms to each people. So floor layouts and all those kind of things count. But by understanding all of this element, they could really increase their yield on a property They were thinking they were going to have to invest up north, but you can do this down south and increase yields and get better yields. Because one of the issues, as we know, this in the south is that the yields aren't as good because the property prices are rising so much. So the yields are now not so good. So unless you do HMOs, I'm a big fan of HMOs, by the way. I do HMOs. But these work for small properties really, really well. Obviously, I'm helping the tenants out, and we'll come on to that. This is another example. Again, I think this could be an ex-local authority house. Basically, they got a joint venture to put some deposit in. They give them £160 a week. And the rent they achieve on this one is £17.10. Basically, if they didn't get this enhanced rent, they would only be making £148 a month, which is not massive for a property in the south, but their new profit was £788. And this is the great thing about this. You're not having to go through, quite often, in an area of Article 4, you can put a couple of people in, no problem at all. If you've got, you don't have to do any licensing, not paying for bills, all of those kind of things. So all the extra money you earn drops to the bottom line. It drops to money that you can then take as profit and extra income. So there are ways of dealing with all of this and how to set up the property. You need to do that. So they were delighted. And when I met them a few years later, they'd left work through utilizing this strategy, which is fantastic. It's nice to be able to have a positive impact. The next strategy that I've used, so the next strategy that I used, if you remember this little flat, is that I continue to learn and develop through this process. Now, I've been learning this now and developing and trying things out and looking at claims and working with other people for over 10 years in this sector, in social housing, in a major detailed way. And now I can claim 895 out of that flat, or the equivalent of 895 out of that flat, by what I call a 2-into-1 strategy. And that's a very simple strategy. Again, there's lots of tenants who would love to take that flat or our house, and I've increased it even further. And then the yields become really exciting. And then when you combine that with some of the other strategies that I do, you can get some really high yielding properties in the south, which is fantastic. So it's all about understanding that. This one here, 2-bed, 2-reception room house. And I'm going to go through this as a P&L for you. The market rent at the time when I bought this was 625. So I bought it and rented it out 625. I used to have an agent because I was working. This was one of the very first properties I bought. I was working, and £73. Net rent 552. So basically what I received in my bank account from the letting agency was 552. I had a mortgage that turned into being £222 because rates went down. Maintenance 100 quid. And so my total cost 322, and I'd make £230. Now, when I first bought it, mortgages were much more expensive because interest rates were a lot higher in those days. They weren't the below 1% certainly that they are today. So I would have hardly made any money out of that. When I first got into property, everyone just said focus on capital growth, not income. I'm a great believer of focusing on income and allowing capital growth to happen over time, because it will, like we are having now, but it kind of comes in fits and spurts, so you can't rely on it, and you certainly can't live off equity. You need to live off cash flow. So I then understood a new method for families. So this is a family let. Only got 3 people in here, and I achieved 1,090 for that at the time. It's gone up since then, obviously. But because I was then started managing myself, I moved my 552, the money that I got in my account, from 552 to 1090 every month. That's almost doubling it. It's a really good increase. Obviously, all the costs are the same. So what that meant is I moved my profit from 230 to 760, which is pretty much tripling my profit, which I think is a great move. Now, this is on a 2-bed house, and I would say, I've got another one on the street that I earn similar money for, but it's a professional HMO and slightly bigger because my costs of running that, because I've only got 4 people in it, it's quite high. So that's quite interesting. You can, without being too complex or doing anything too overly dramatic, and you certainly don't need to do high refurbs and all of these kind of things for these kind of properties either. But the tenants, if you know how to find the tenants, you get a lot of tenants, and there are a lot of people who want that kind of stuff. And that's just by renting out and understanding families and their makeup and putting in multiple claims and understanding all of that. The other one is the oversized strategy. I mentioned this before, where you might get someone who claims, and in this example, the 3-bed LHA rate was 1148, but we got a family who could claim the 4-bed rate. And therefore, my at the time, the rent moved from what I used to get when letting to 4 students of 135 to 1,600. Now, what happened is this house is a bit further out from the university. They built some blocks, so it's harder to get students anyway. So what worked really well, and then the people who moved in on the 4-bedroom rate stayed for 8 years, and really improved my profitability. Again, they were delighted with the house because they moved from a smaller house. So what you've got to remember is a lot of people go, oh, why do they want to live there? Well, because that was a bigger house for them. And they wanted to get their kids into certain schools. There's some good schools around there too. So for them, they were very motivated to get in. And obviously they enjoyed the property because they stayed for a very long time. And their kids obviously grew up. The reason they had a lot of kids is because 2 families merged into one, that created all of that. So that is another example. So that I call the rate strategy and understanding, who qualifies for what. We work with charities in various areas as well, and do that. Another one in Guildford, where this is also sort of a multi-unit block in a way, but basically the market rent at the time when I first set this up was about 1,300. I thought I might rent it to students at 1,500. But once I understood the little micro studio strategy, I got LHA rent of 2,860. I do pay some bills on that, but my profit out of that is almost £2,000 a month, and I only have four people in there. So that's a great little learner, understanding the micro studio strategy. So it's almost 25 grand a year, and that was at that time. Rates gone up, that's more now. Which is fantastic. So that's the micro studio strategy. Then when I realized that, in the credit crunch, when I was really going big time in this strategy, that it was difficult to buy. So why bother to buy? Why not just take on other landlords' properties and do this, but guarantee them a rent? Well, that's now known as, some bright spark came up with the idea to call it rent to rent. I've been doing that for quite a few years. Before this all came out on the circuit, but a lot of people did it to rent to HMO. I just rent any house and guarantee the rent and get higher rates through social housing. This one I guaranteed at 725, happened to be the market rent because the guy's mortgage at the time was 700. But I achieved 1,500. I had a few costs, so I was making 675 and he was making 25 quid. So he was delighted because he was very nervous of it ever being empty because he'd have to stump up the money for the mortgage. Again, it's by understanding all of this stuff, so you can utilize this in rent to rent. So if you have a rent to rent strategy or thinking about getting into rent to rent, this is a great way of doing it. Also, I really understand cash flow models. I'm not investing in the property. The thing with obviously taking large properties and HMOing them, or even HMOs themselves, quite often you're freshening them up, investing in them, furnishing them, and you have high setup costs. There are no setup costs in this. There's maybe maybe £100 maybe to put some locks on doors if people want that, but there aren't really set up costs to this, which is fantastic. So my cash flow looks far better than a lot of rent to rent modelers as well, and people don't always understand that element to it too. So that's where we are. I've also helped people to do set up rent to rent businesses. In fact, because I had quite a good big rent to rent business, I helped people set them up in other areas. This was the first deal of someone who was doing it in Reading, where he guaranteed £1,000, and basically he made 1,620, so he was making 620 a month. And he went on and got at least 20 properties when I last spoke to him in that area. You might think that that's all a bit much and hard work. Well, we also work with charities, and I've helped others work with charities to basically set up hands-free HMOs. This one here, I used to get about 475 a month for the 4 rooms, 1,090, paid my council tax, pay my bills, pay my cleaner. I'd probably net about 1,300 before I had to pay my mortgage. Whereas I, by working with a charity, took that property off me. So this is a bit more of a, just an average HMO. I do a lot of high-end HMOs where I get better rents en suites. So this was one of my original HMOs, which was a bit tired. I needed a revamp, but instead of revamping it all, I just handed it over to a charity. They were delighted, and they guaranteed me 1,500. So not masses, but it's a great hands-free strategy. And a lot of people come to me, or a lot of people want to free up time and they want to travel or they want to do things in property. But as soon as they're managing all of their properties, that's great. I helped someone set up a portfolio of about, I think, eight guaranteed rent properties in London, and they retired. And when the pandemic came, they were like, well, I'm great because I've got this charity paying me money. Don't have any of these rent holidays, people losing their jobs and can't pay me and all of those kind of things, worries through a pandemic. So there we go. Yeah, just throw it if you've got specific questions about any of these strategies. I'm more than happy to answer them. Also, if you do want to know a little bit more about them, happy to set up a phone call. There's a way of setting up a phone call with me as well. So this is where someone basically set up a six-figure income through these guaranteed rent strategies that I help them do. So all of these examples I went through make over 50 grand profit a year, and this is really possible from anyone. If people want to know more about these, or I haven't gone, there's only a certain amount of time, so I can't go through the detail. Please do. We can set up a call, and I'll show you a way of setting up a call and get that. So how did you reconfigure? Yeah, I didn't reconfigure the flat. I just put a tenant who was basically, the tenant was entitled to the 2-bed rate rather than the 1-bed rate. So I started claiming a 2-bed rate for a 1-bed property. The reason they were entitled to the 2-bed rate was because there was, if you have a mother with a child, then there's 2 of them or with a baby. Obviously, the baby often stays in the room with them. And if they're on a waiting list, what you've got to understand, sometimes people go, but you're cramming them in and all of this stuff. If they're living in a room, or they're living in their parents' house and they want to get out, or they're in a bad relationship and all of these kind of things, they are, they're just delighted to get something else. And that's where you have to factor in finding tenants. And I call it the upside down lettings process, because if you start advertising these properties, you're not going to suddenly get all of these people turning up. You need to go out and seek these people and then offer them opportunities. They have the choice whether to take the property or not, but quite often they're desperate for properties. So they have other factors that they're looking at other than the price, because the price is paid for by the basically the benefit system, and you're helping them get what they want and need. And then you've got a queue of tenants basically helping you, looking for your that you're working with. And that's what we do. We find the tenant and then try and fit them into one of a suitable property within our portfolio. There's a question about ASTs. Some of them are all on single ASTs. The odd property has 2 ASTs on them. Again, it depends on the setup. I've gone through. I thought I'd give you a sample of all these different strategies rather than basically explain. Do that. I have a 2-bed garden flat. How would one go about finding LHA tenants? You can talk to the council. You can. I do quite a bit of work with charities. I do some self-advertising in certain channels, and certain channels are better than others. So there's many ways of finding tenants. We don't tend to put houses on Rightmove and that kind of stuff, because we're just advertising the house. We're not looking for the tenants. So it's about networks and talking to people and all of those kind of things. And we also advertise in specific channels. This is someone that I helped. We got this email. This is back until 2015, and he'd been with us for quite a few years. So you can see how long now I've been doing this strategy. He'd been with us probably about 5 years. So probably this is 2010 that he moved in or something. I'd like to say big thank you to the staff at B&F who helped me only when my only option was sleeping rough. Because of your help, I now have my daughter living with me, who I hadn't seen for years. Can't thank you enough. All the best for the future. Very best regards, Andy and Amy. So basically, we moved him into what I would call a 2+2. He had 2 rooms, and as he said, he was sleeping rough at the time. He didn't have a house, so we put him into that. He lived there for quite a while. He then reconnected with his daughter. He then said, look, I'd love to be able, can my daughter come and live with me? So we then moved him and his daughter into somewhere else. And then they were obviously moving on. I think he got himself back on his feet, got a job, and was moving on to somewhere else as well. So, so basically, you need to make sure that whoever comes into the house for a 2+2 is entitled to the 2-bed rate. Not the 2-bed rate, sorry, the 1-bed flat rate as opposed to the sharers rate, because a lot of people, as soon as they go into a room somewhere, they're entitled to a shared rate, which is kind of what it is for HMOs, rather than the 1-bed flat rate. If you're over 35, so you look for tenants who are over 35, they can qualify for the 1-bed rate. If you give them, they can share the kitchen and the bathroom, that's not a problem. But if you have exclusive use of a couple of rooms, you need to make sure the tenancy is set up in the right way. You need to make sure, the claim is set up in the right way. And it's these little details that make a huge difference. So you must get the right strategies. You must understand these little details, and you must be able to fill out all of this paperwork correctly. Because I see it that a lot of people, try and do this and then fall over, trip over, and create some problems for themselves. So it's good to get some good knowledge behind that. If you're interested in this strategy further, then quite happy to have a conversation. Who might want this be useful for? Someone who wants to help people out. We helped a lot of people out through this system. Someone who wants to increase their income, and someone who wants a lifestyle that they deserve and want, and this is a good way of doing it. You might be going, yeah, but I do HMOs, or which is best, HMOs, social housing? I have done over time both. I'm also now really focusing on blocks and that kind of stuff at the moment as well, which combines both HMOs and social housing, interestingly. But these are just some of the things that go. I hear a lot of people saying, has market saturation hit in their area for HMOs? I think there are certain areas where it has, certain areas where it hasn't. It's still a great strategy. I'm still a great believer of HMOs, so I'm not punching holes in HMOs. But there are less suitable properties. Obviously, properties have gone up in price, so the bigger properties, I think, are harder to find and recycle your cash in HMOs at the moment. High refurb costs, lots of other people's money is required, high yields, high workload. Often you need to deal with licensing and Article 4. Social housing, there's loads of tenants, and probably 90% of properties are suitable because there's a way of generating revenue. You might not make quite as much money per property as an HMO. It is the yields probably aren't quite as strong. Some of them are, some of them aren't. But less investment up front, less refurb required, good high yields, and no licensing issues, and generally no planning issue. Well, generally no planning issues and generally no licensing issues. One or two of the properties that I have maybe require a license, the same as this. So you could hand over your HMO. If you're fed up of running your HMO, you could try and seek out a charity. And that's something, again, I do run a course on social housing. I haven't got one coming up. That's why I just say, jump on the phone to me and then we can chat through and I can see how I can help you. I do, have various educational things along the way, but just jump on a free call and I can see where you are, where you want to go. You can ask me about the 2 different strategies, what you should do. So maybe you've got a bit of confusion. Maybe you're trying to set some goals, take what you learned earlier on and try and set some goals. You just want a little bit of advice around some of the things that you could or couldn't do, or, what your circumstances are. Give me a shout and we can go do that. So if you want a complimentary call, I'm not charging anything for this. Make the most of it. Ask me what you want, but it's like, I'm here to help to try and provide some clarity as to where you might go. To see, and then, obviously, if I can help you in any way, I'll share and show what you can do. This is the link. I don't know how to put that in the chat box or anything, but at the moment, but maybe later on I can do that for you guys. But maybe take a photograph of that or something like that to do that. I'm not sure if I might have gone over time a little bit, so apologies if I have. But I've helped many people through these social housing strategies, and they've gone on and achieved great things. One guy had a portfolio and he identified £72,000 extra by switching some of his portfolio across. So that's really good. And then there are those who just got one property And I had one person who just changed a bit of the paperwork, increased the rent by 500 quid a month. So that worked well for them. And then I had someone who did rent to rent, and he was making £1,000 a month out of the properties he did. He went on and did 10 properties. And then it does work in Wales as well. William has done a few in Cardiff. And so that, thanks very much, Dan, for putting a bit.ly in for the link for the to give it a chat. That will link you through to a calendar, book the appointment, and then we'll set up a half an hour Zoom just to chat through, or even I think maybe a bit longer, but I always say 30 minutes just to do that. All of those examples make almost $250,000 a year. That's just 4 examples of people who've gone through that stuff. If you do want this chapter in this book and the YPN article, just email us in at pa@mikefrisbee.co.uk. So that's pa@mikefrisbee.co.uk. So thank you very much for everyone. Create options for yourself so you're in control, or you will be controlled. And it was great to see you all. Do book that call in. And if there's any other questions that you want me to answer now, if we've got time, happy to try and do that. So that's me done.
Okay, Mike, brilliant, absolutely wonderful. I'll be calling you soon.
Yeah, do
thank you very much. Yeah, I don't think there are. I think you've answered most of the questions. So
I tried to answer as they were coming through.
Great, nice one, brilliant. Right, because of the fact that time's a bit pushed, I'm going to move straight on to Darren Hutton. If you're there, Darren. He's around somewhere. Darren.
Hi. Hi, Rob. How are you?
Oh, yeah, all right. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Jolly good. Right, folks, here we have Darren Hutton, who's going to talk to you about energy. Off you go, Darren. Cheers.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Darren Hutton. I own a company called Choose Eco Limited. We are involved in energy efficiency, so insulating homes, upgrading heating systems, also involved in renewable technology, so air source heat pumps, infrared heating systems, and solar PV, and how those can combine together. And we also build carbon negative, energy positive properties. So I'm sure you're aware that's housing of the future. So, but tonight I'm going to be talking, I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so, all right, there we go. So can everyone see that?
Yeah, I can see that fine, Darren.
Okay, great. So energy efficient homes, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot to everybody. We all know what's going on with the energy markets at the moment. Prices are going crazy for gas and electricity. The announcement's going to be made tomorrow as to where the new price cap is going to be. It looks like they're going to be set at around 50% higher than what it is now. So 30 pence per kilowatt hour for electricity and around 6 pence per kilowatt hour for gas. It's going to have a huge impact on a lot of people. So what we want to talk about tonight is the new 2025 regulations for landlords and what that means. Okay, then methods of improving EPC ratings, available funding for improving the EPC ratings, and the tax breaks and the increased revenue that can come from it. Okay, so best way to increase or decrease the amount you're spending on energy and for your tenants to spend on energy is to increase the efficiency of the home. So what do the 2025 regulations mean for a landlord? Well, at the moment, you've got your MEES requirement. That's your minimum energy efficiency standard. Now, from 2025, that's going to increase from an EPC level E up to a C. That's going to be quite difficult to achieve in a lot of cases. And for many landlords, it's going to be an expensive job as well, but it's a necessity. If you do not reach that and then you get a new tenancy, quite simply, you're going to be fined or you won't be able to rent the property out. So it will be illegal to rent these properties. So, okay, so methods of increasing energy efficiency. So increase the loft insulation. The optimum for this is 270 mils. 25% of heat loss goes through the roof if it's not insulated. Okay, so ensure the property has cavity wall insulation. A lot of properties, recent properties, cavity wall, but no insulation, and 35% of the heat is going through those walls. The same as a solid wall property, if that's got no insulation, you're also looking at 35% loss. Huge impact for both homeowners and tenants when you consider what a tenant's going to do. They need to keep themselves warm, they need to eat. So where do you think the rent is going to go in those circumstances? The best thing that you can do is make sure that the tenant has an energy efficient home, reduce their heating costs, an ethical landlord, keep the money coming in. Upgrade boilers. Old boilers, very inefficient, can cost double the amount of gas that a new condensing boiler can. And also low energy lighting, again, reducing costs for the tenant. And low energy lighting will last longer than standard light bulbs as they would. Install renewable technologies, so increase the value of your property, taking out the combustion heating systems and installing, for example, air source heat pumps, ground source heat pumps, and infrared heating. So all of these are energy efficient. You're not non-combustion. You're increasing the EPC rating of the property, allowing it to be rented out in 2025. So funding available for this. If you've got tenants, which Mike, you were talking about before with benefits, that opens up many more doors to you. So any tenant in receipt of benefits that you discussed, Mike, they will qualify for Eco3 funding. What this means is cavity wall insulation, loft insulation, underfloor insulation, and solid wall insulation can all be carried out free of charge. This is going to increase the energy efficiency of the home, reduce energy costs for the tenant. Now, LA Flex, it works very much in the same way as Eco3, but it's simply for older tenants over 60. If you've got a tenant who's pregnant, children under 5, ill health, that's another reason. Again, you can get these upgrades carried out free of charge. Okay, more for homeowners. Sometimes can work with the right strategies with local authority delivery scheme. So if you've got a tenant or yourself have got a household income of 30,000 or less, again, you can access this funding. Okay, so HUG is the home upgrade grant. That tends to work with different local authorities, and they can put up to £10,000 to carry out energy efficient upgrades. And from April, we will get the boiler upgrade scheme. So any property will be eligible to claim a £5,000 grant, which can be used to take out an old combustion heating system and update it with an air source or a ground source heat pump. So £5,000 towards the cost of that. Okay, so the tax breaks for this, all of the upgrades, if you do have to pay for them, if your tenants are on any benefits or meet the qualifying criteria, well, all of these are tax deductible. Okay, so then when installing solar PV, now this is where it gets interesting. Super deduction means that you can claim 130% of the cost of putting in that solar PV system against your tax liability. Now, if your profits aren't enough to cover the cost of putting in that PV system, you can go back 3 years. Okay, so it's a very worthwhile exercise putting in these solar PV systems. Okay, what that is, the 130% capital allowances, it increases the value of the property. It can help increase your EPC rating, but then you can also charge your tenant for the energy that PV system produces rather than the tenant buying from a supplier. So with the prices the way they are, you still charge below what a supplier would. So for example, 25p per kilowatt hour. You then, a 4 kilowatt PV system will generate 3,600 kilowatt hours per year. So you're looking at an extra £900 in profit. Okay. So my company has access to all of the funding avenues that are available. We're quite happy to carry out an EPC compliance service for you. That what happens there is we carry out a new EPC. Okay, so that will determine where the property is now based on the new RDSAP calculations, which is the software used to calculate your EPC compliance. Okay, we then look at what measures need to be carried out to get your property up to a C, which is obviously where it needs to be. We then liaise with your tenants to see what qualifying criteria they meet. And then we put a full report together for you that allows you to see exactly what measures need to be carried out, what funding's available, what costs there are to you, if any. And then we can also put together a breakdown of how the tax benefits work for you. Once we've done that, if we've established that your tenants can qualify, we will then go ahead and carry out the work for you. Okay, get all the upgrades done and then produce a new EPC showing that the property is compliant. So what we're looking at here are ways of using the benefits that your tenants are on to get the work done needed to keep your houses compliant and rentable. Okay, so there we go. What I've just gone through there. Now, if you've got any questions at all on that, I know I kept this short and sweet, but it's very simple, very to the point. If you've got tenants on any type of benefit or they meet the qualifying criteria, use those to get the upgrades done, increase the value of your property and increase the revenue. So I think that's pretty much it. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to drop me an email, give me a call, and there we go.
Oh, that was short and sweet, Darren.
It was, yes.
Interesting, though, all the same. Very, very good, very good. A lot of people don't know about that. It's I didn't have a clue when, and well, as you know, we spoke, and I learned a lot that day from that first conversation.
Absolutely, there's a lot more that goes into it, Mike, and many more things to consider. But in the first instance, it's best to just give people an idea, and then we can look at what can be done moving forward based on the different strategies people use.
Yeah, I see. How long does all this take? Say somebody comes along and says to you, "Oh, I'd like you to do a survey for me." How long would it all take?
I'd say within 4 to 5 weeks, we can have the full report together for you. Depends on how fast we can get the information together in order to get all of the well, to find out where we need to be with each of the properties.
I see. Thank you very much. I think there's a couple of
Okay,
other
so
questions as well.
which are, well, we cover the whole of the UK. We've got installers all over the UK there. So, okay, apart from benefits, what might be the qualifying criteria? So it can be a tenant over 60, a tenant with children under the age of 5, any health issues qualify, and believe it or not, pregnant women also qualify. So there you go, Andy. Okay, so Dr. Yogesh, can you always find a solution to get an EPC compliant for a rental? Always is a stretch. 99% of the cases we can, based on new technology. There is always going to be a cost to do that. In many cases, solar PV can push the properties to a C, but there is not full funding available for that. You will always have to pay some sort of contribution, but as I say, you can claim 130% of the entire costs back and then generate extra income from charging the tenant. Okay, Damien, yes, we are nationwide. Okay, what is an air source and a ground source heat pump, and what are the advantages of infrared over normal heating? Okay, so air source heat pump is, you have radiators or underfloor heating. You have an internal water cylinder and you have an external unit which works in the same, well, the reverse of a fridge. So you have a fan. The fan draws air from the outside over pipes containing a refrigerant. The chemical reaction of that is it generates heat. That heats your hot water, which covers your heating and your hot water. A ground source heat pump, the way that works is you either dig trenches if you've got enough land, or you bore a hole, normally down 100 meters, and you use geothermal heating to heat hot water, to heat water for your heating and your hot water. So there's those two. So infrared, the advantages of infrared heating over normal heating. Well, they're far more efficient, and rather than heating a space, infrared will heat the person. So you're saving a lot of energy because you've not got a whole area to heat up, as I say, just the person. No, unfortunately, John, we don't have anyone in Belfast. That's somewhere we don't cover. Okay, so with heat pumps, there can be horror stories. So you may have heard that they don't work correctly. They are expensive to run. The reason for this is when it comes to heat pumps, they cannot be treated as a standard heating system. They've got a lot of physics involved. They've got to be designed and installed correctly. You've got to take into account the fabric of the building, the insulation, the size of the building. All of these calculations are worked out, and you have to take into account the heat loss calculations. Okay, so any other questions at all? No, okay, Rob?
Okay, Darren, that's great. Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. I heard somebody say, oh, about Belfast. Just as a matter of interest, I was wondering if people could just let us know where you're listening from, because we are a nationwide platform. So, because of the internet, and just wondering where you're listening from. I'd be grateful, please. Just put it in the chat. Be wonderful. Thank you. All right. Not much more to say really about that, is there? We've actually gone 10 minutes early. I was expecting you to be a bit longer than that, Darren. But there you go. So what I'm going to do is I'll wrap the meeting up there. Just like to say thanks to everyone involved. Thanks to Will, Lucy, thanks to Mike Frisbee, thanks to Darren Hutton. Thanks very much to the audience, because thank you for coming, because without you, we wouldn't have a show. Thank you to our sponsors who keep everything free and enable us to run this thing. And that's about it. Are there any comments, please? I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat, see if there's anything from any answers. No, it doesn't. I can't see any answers as yet in the chat. So maybe I don't know where people are from. I know I'm here. There's a few of us from Sussex, a few of us from Hampshire, Surrey, Belfast potentially. But there we go. Right. Okay. Dan, can you speak? Can you hear me?
Yep, yeah, you're all
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
There's a
So
few
it's
people who've
all
left
went
their
quiet for a
location.
second. I thought I was the only one yapping away. So yes, thank you to everyone. Next month, March, we're looking at March already. It was only Christmas 5 minutes ago. We're looking at March. Speakers include Will Lucy, he's a regular speaker. Louise Reynolds, I believe she's talking about due diligence, and Sarah Poynton Ryan, who runs a training company based in Milton Keynes, and we'll be looking forward to seeing them next month. And apart from that, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Dan. Goodbye, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.